Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Learn Yu-Gi-Oh! Today I have my constant co-host with me, as well as a special guest, needs no introductions, Mr. Two-time back-to-back YCS Vegas 3v3 champion, Dominic Couch. Today we're going to be discussing about Fire King. We're going to go over 3 deck lists. Going to go over the pure budget list, the dogmatical list, and the tri-brigade list, as well as the Diabell Star meta list, I would call it. And lastly, we're going to be looking at what OCG is doing and why all their strategies kind of work in conundrum with the current format. We're going to talk about budget and why it is a disservice, or if you are not choosing to stay in your financial budget lane for a hobby. We're just going to talk generalities here, and then let's get started. I don't think I need to introduce Mr. Couch. How you doing, man?
I'm doing alright. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. So I'm assuming you're preparing for the next 3v3 Vegas that's happening in February, and I just want your thoughts on Fire King as an overall meta option, as well as comparing it to the rest of the format.
Yeah, for sure. I think Fire King is a very solid option. I have been playing a lot leading into this upcoming YCS Vegas, so I'd love to be able to, with my new teammates, win a third time. That would be fantastic. But really just excited to play with my friends, honestly. 3v3s are always fantastic.
There's also an event in Costa Rica. Will you be attending that as well as a way to test, or that's going to be like not happening for you?
Yeah, I'm going to Costa Rica as well.
Okay, great, fantastic. So I have the first list up in front of us in the screen. It's the budget list, and thanks to Rarity Collection, I don't think there's anything in here that's overly expensive. Am I correct in assuming that, guys?
Right. A lot of it from this list I'm seeing is that a lot of it's 3 structure decks plus Rarity Collection. So for a lot of budget players, this is a great option if you want to play something competitive from the get-go. Dom, what do you think about this?
Okay, so for all the budget players out there, you are not gonna like my opinion on this.
Give it to him straight.
Okay.
Yo, no Wanted, no Diabell Star, no Bonfire, like not being able to play the Snake Eye cards to like their fullest potential, like Ash and Flameburge. Like this deck also doesn't play like Princess or SP Little Knight. Like, I'm just gonna be honest, like those cards are that expensive, like for a reason. They are way too good in a deck like this not to play. I understand, like if you cannot play the deck with those cards, like for whatever reason, then I understand. And I honestly just probably would play a deck other than Fire King at that point. Like, there's cheaper options that like options that are comparatively cheap that don't need to play all of those cards to be at their fullest potential. But this deck is a deck that I truly just believe is unplayable without any of those cards.
Okay, so back in the day, there were certain YouTube channels that did the structure deck challenge, where like you would take 3 structure decks and take it to event. Do you recommend that to someone who's budget? Do you think 3 structure decks in a dream is like viable for at least a regional level, or if not, decent in local?
Depends how competitive your local is, right? Like, I mean, like, if everybody at your local is a budget player, like, what's going to win that local is going to be very different than what wins a different local. It also, like player diff is kind of like a thing as well. So if everybody at your local is not the greatest, and you are like the best player at your local, like, you're going to be able to win with worse decks. So
Okay,
I think like everybody can be
level?
successful.
Oh, I'm sorry to cut you off. What about the regional level?
This is not topping a regional, bro. This is not topping a regional.
Okay, maybe the regional bar was too high. How about at least an invite?
Oh yeah, I think you can get your invite with like anything. So
That's an interesting topic. We might.
And that is very, very
maybe
viable.
maybe that's not the most common opinion, but I do think that like getting your invite usually is based on if you just play well, like you can get your invite with most decks. I feel like unless your deck is literally like 40 vanillas, like I think if your deck does anything, like you should be able to get your invite.
Got it.
I do believe that like other decks are obviously going to be better than cheaper options like people could play to try to get their invite, but to say that like budget is necessarily in the way of like stopping somebody from getting their invite, I don't believe is the case.
Interesting. Cool. I think we've talked about the budget list long enough. I think I'm gonna move on to the next list. In front of me is the Dogmatica version. So instead of Dio Bellstar, we're playing Dogmatica cards.
Judging from this, I feel like Nadir is like the best carry card in case you get hand trapped somewhere, just so that you can resolve a Maximus. But it's still not as powerful, right, Dom?
Yeah. I mean, it's not as powerful as like what all the Snake Eye cards do. Like it's kind of this is the deck I would try to play if you were going to try to play a budget version. Like,
okay, so this would be your ideal of budget. Like if you want to still compete relatively strongly, you would play Dogmatica cards and not just a pure list.
yeah,
Right.
like, I think like this is still a deck that should be playing the Bellstar, but that's besides the point.
I truly believe Dogmatica is the worst version because you serve it one time and then you get drilled and then you cannot play.
Or like even like before like Servant, right? You can still get a roll and you still can't play Servant properly.
Yeah, I just feel like draw is in the format too heavily right now for like to warrant playing the Nadia cards personally.
I don't necessarily think that's why those cards are bad, but that's fine. I mean, you can make the same argument for a card like Bonfire, right? Like, so I don't think that's a factor. I think it's just weaker, has a way lower ceiling with
Got it.
more restrictions.
Right.
Okay, got it. So I was actually going to ask. You said that that's not the reason why the Nadir card is bad. Can you explain your reasoning and logic behind that statement?
I just did, right? Like, it's just weaker than the Snake Eye deck. Like in the board it puts up, like
It's just weaker overall. Is okay.
Like the ceiling's lower, right?
weaker playing through a board. Your engine is weaker. It just doesn't. The quality of cards in the Nadir Servant deck is just worse.
Got it. So ideally, in a perfect world, these still would be Dio Bellstar cards, and then it's way more playable than the Dogmatic.
I mean, like I don't even understand why you wouldn't play the D Bellstar cards in the Nadir Servant deck. What's the point of not playing Wanted and D Bellstar? It's not like they conflict with Nadir Servant.
Right. Well, I mean, Nadir also kind of breaks boards to a degree, does it not?
Not as much as like using your extra deck play through field.
Alright. Fair enough. Fair enough.
I mean, this is another deck like just not playing Populous, not playing Snake Eye Ash, like not playing Flamebird's Dragon. Like those cards are very oppressive. Like warrant a lot of interaction. Nadir Servant just doesn't really do the same thing. Like Maximus can be interacted with a variety of different ways. Like you can interact with Nadir Servant itself. You could interact with Maximus, like pretty much any interaction in the game. Like Maximus also isn't a quick effect, so like pretty much any interaction in the game, whether it's destruction, effect negation, like everything interacts with those cards, which is not true the other way.
Cool. Alright. I think we've talked about the Dogmatica list. It sucks, don't play it. Anyways, here is the Tri-Brigade version. I think this is the more interesting version of the list for the deck. I think the Tri-Brigade cards are really strong and cool. But they have their own set of restrictions as well imposed upon the list compared to like Teal Bellstar, where there's like really no restriction.
Right, I'm seeing something interesting in this list. There's Dio Bellstar and no wanteds. So we're still in the budget restriction, but like we can afford a couple cards. Like, so what's the why at that point just ball out unwanted, right?
Well, yeah, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, right?
Talking about like the budget options. I feel like if you're playing the budget option, like you just kind of got to work with whatever you got. Like,
right. Like it's like just trying to play.
I think if you're trying to sit here and say like you can afford like all these other smaller end cards, like maybe you have a lot of small end cards you could trade for like one SP Little Knight, or I don't know. I don't want to say that like X person or whatever can't afford like a card. I don't like talking about that being a reason like somebody can't play something. It's just because then obviously like there are certain scenarios in which people cannot afford certain cards, but to act like the budget option of the deck is anywhere near the deck like with the expensive cards is just never going to be a conversation. It's always going to be worse. Like those cards are expensive for a reason. They're good.
Right. I do want to bring up a conversation though, because this version of the deck has been quite popular, at least on like the local level, maybe the regional level. Is there a world where like you can still play like Bonfire Diabellstar and play like more of a 50 to 60 card deck where this deck is just a bunch of gas? Like even though like the extra deck restriction is like that compressed.
I mean, that's a multi-step answer.
Go for it. Try it.
Like, first of all, yes, that is possible. Second of all, just because like you'd be playing more engines does not mean your deck has to be 50 to 60 cards. Like that doesn't necessarily mean that. Like, if you fucking if you put a bunch of different cards into a deck, and you build your deck around Snake Eye Ash, but your deck is 50, 60 cards and your deck is very inconsistent at seeing Snake Eye Ash, then now, like, in theory, your deck works and, like, you were able to put it all together, but it doesn't necessarily make sense to do that. So.
Alright.
I kind of want to revisit the other deck lists in a second. So, is there a world where you can play Dogmatica to its fullest potential with the Snake Eye engine? So it would be Snake Eye, Dogmatica, Fire King. Would that be more viable than either or engine, or how would that work?
Add at that point, right? Like if your deck already does all this other stuff, like, do you really need to play like Nadir Servant for like a Shaddoll Schism at the end? Like, probably not.
Right, just cutting out all the stuff completely, right? Like, just play like super standard as much as possible.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And would that same logic still apply to Tri-Brigade? Because to me, the Tri-Brigade cards are always gas. Like if I see a Fractal and like I'm gonna pop off.
I think those cards are like somewhat outdated. Like they just don't do enough. Too restrictive. Again, SP Little Knight broken.
Yeah, that card is pretty ridiculous. Cool. I guess at this point, everyone in this call would like to talk about this list, which is the actual current version of the competitive deck that's legal, because we have not gotten access to Bonfire yet legally, and Pop Police is not out for like at least another month or so.
Okay. Sure.
What I do like about this list though, because like I feel like if you just open like Fenrir Arvada, it's literally like an FTK, right? Like no one can draw you.
I mean, I don't think that necessarily means it's an FTK, but I
You
understand.
just get to resolve everything usually.
Okay, well, Fenrir Arvada also does not go anywhere. Like if Arvada negates a draw, it's like a 3-card combo. Now we're involving something else, and if it involves Fire King Island, it's 4 cards. So, or Wanted, 4 cards.
Well,
Yeah.
this is clearly by far the most competitive version of the list we have so far, right? Because I'm seeing like really interesting cards that other lists didn't have, like this Dark Armed. The Typhon is fantastic. The SP is of course ridiculous as a card. Both Charmers I think is really interesting tech as well because we have the Black Witch in our main deck. And then I really want to talk about this tech card in the side with Soul Release. I think this card is bonkers for the most part in this format.
Yeah, like there's a lot of talk about this card where like if you just hard draw it and like especially like, going into like Phantom Nightmare, it seems like you get rid of like both Princess and like all their follow up, and they just kind of have to play with just Akirin probably whatever the board is. But like even then, like I don't think I hear it's still not enough.
I don't know. I feel like you can't play around this. Like it's really hard to play around Soul Release, and it sounds impossible if there even is a way. I don't think I straight up don't think there's a way to play around Soul Release in this deck. Unless you're playing Rain Bali, and then I think Rain Bali is just worse overall as a card in terms of quality in this version of the list anyway.
I mean, I think the card is definitely better in Phantom Nightmare. I don't want to say it's unbeatable or, you know.
Yeah, because like, there's like cards like Bell and Lancia exist too, right?
You said what?
Counterplay. Like cards like Bell and Lancia are considered counterplay to Soul Release.
I mean, it's also just cards like Anti-Spell Fragrance.
Right, that too, right? If people are citing it, right? So it's like I do feel that like even if you have it, there's like post side it gets worse. Like so you have to play game 1 as like a surprise factor if you want like full value. But like even then that's worse into other matchups.
Well, I mean,
is Soul Release a main deck worthy card? I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But like if we're assuming going into Vegas or like post Costa Rica where like Fire King is that dominated, you might as well just play them in the main deck. But it's just so that you can have like a shot game 1. But like again, like you're just putting yourself in a worse position, and like that and like how Dom said, like because there's counterplay post side, the card gets worse, right?
Would you consider a card like Crossout in your side deck to counteract this also? Because you guys both had mentioned Anti-Spell, Lancia. Would you consider playing Crossout, considering it's going to be very hand trap heavy?
I mean, possibly, right? Like,
you could, and it's just something like somebody's side pattern has to make sense to do. It's not like it's the question is that like it's certainly something you consider. I don't know if it's worth it. Like, then like somebody could just not even be playing Soul Release dead card.
Yeah,
you could like also release like, and like because you have a dead Soul Release in your hand, you could just lose. So I don't
Okay.
I don't necessarily think that the card is game. Also don't necessarily think that you have to go above and beyond to try to beat it, but I think that it does naturally lose to things people do, like playing Anti-Spell Fragrance. Like, it's not even for Soul Release, it just falls prey to it.
Also, this list plays 3 Skyburn. I've seen most lists play 1. Is there any like reasoning or logic behind that? Or is it just a way to dodge Imperm going second?
No idea, I don't think that's good.
I would just probably only play 1, because like I feel like it's only meant for like the decks that play floods, and like you have but like even then we're like looking at the format right now, like we're barely seeing any floods. So like that card could just be put in the side deck completely, because I only see even the card played game 1 in OCG.
Well, speaking of OCG, we should move on to the most cracked version of this deck, right? OCG Fire King. So we do have cards like Populace and Bonfire in this list, as well as a Princess, and of course all the other additions.
Yeah, Sneaking Ash is a really crazy card. Like, John, like you think this card is like that crazy of a starter?
I mean, yeah, that card's really insane.
That card's insane, right? Yeah. And so in OCG, right? Like I'm seeing that like they get to play like multiple call buys and cross out. Because it's like hand traps like all over. Like, do you think like in the TCG like you need as many those cards to resolve so that your combo goes through for game 1?
I mean, again, like I don't think it's that cut and dry. Like you also have to, like for game 1, you also have to be able. Your deck has to be able to go second effectively. If you find that like those cards are good in your deck, like going second as well, like then you could reason with it. But I usually don't like playing cards to try to protect my combo because I trust my engine is good enough. But yeah.
Right. Because like I know in the TCG like we come to the conclusion of like we're just probably playing 15 hand traps game 1. I'll just like hopefully we draw 2 and just like hope our opponent just passes, and then our engine just kind of just plays. But I see in OCG like they like to play more like more explosive, where like they want to play like all these like anti hand trap cards to like pop off there to get to win the roll. It gets so happen that like I guess if people are just playing mirrors all day, those cards are good, but like we're not expecting to play mirrors all the time like that.
Like they play all that because they have Maxi. Like
right.
They can't let that card resolve. Like that's why. That's why these OCG decks also look like they play a bunch of one-ofs. Like when Maxi resolves going like one Nibiru, that makes no sense in the TCG. Like it's not just something for cross out, but like when they Maxi their opponent and their opponent commits, like they're going to be able to draw into cards like Nib, like Valor, Imperm.
Yeah.
I also want to point out the interesting tech in this side. We mentioned Lancer earlier, but there's Phantasmi here as well.
Right, I'm seeing that card like a lot more in OCG just recently. Just because like I knew that like Rescuers is still a thing, and like all the other decks. It just so happened that like it draws into like all these blowout cards or like even Engine. Dom, what do you think about that? Do you think that a card like this will be better in the TCG, knowing that Maxi is not legal?
Fantastic.
Well, Maxi makes that card better, so because it can draw into Maxi when they make it legal. But I think like it's certainly there could be times like during the Phantom Nightmare format where that card is good. It also just depends on a lot of people's approach. Like Phantasme is a card that's like very easily outed by Kieran. So like if you wanted it to live, you'd have to like wait like all the way till the end, which at that point it's no longer trying to draw into hand traps to stop the play. Your deck would look a lot different to be playing Phantasme in an aspect like that. But
Right, and at that point, like you would just be drawing cards like blowout cards, right? Just like rather than drawing hand traps to prevent the board from happening, you can attempting to break the board.
Sure, but like at that point, you could also just make their board better because now you're triggering their princess if you're waiting all the way.
And that's like the at that point, right? We just not play Phantasme at all, and just play as many hand traps as possible, draw them, and just hope they pass.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly different approaches that can be taken. Like I said, like I've been playing a lot, so I've been messing around with different approaches myself. But
Okay, well, I feel like we've been talking about going first a lot. How would you navigate the mirror match? Do you just play the 15 hand traps, or do you play board breakers? Because every list I've seen so far, they're like very large lack of board breakers. Is this deck like not a board breaker deck that you can play into?
Like, at least from my experience looking at deck lists, it just feels like tier where like you just kind of have to prevent the board from happening. So like playing all these like non-engine cards or like quote unquote hand traps to prevent a big board from happening is probably the approach that we should be taking. Because like the board breaker approach, the only card that I think is being worth discussing at the moment is Shadow Fusion, because it does what Soul Release does, if not more. But like not every deck can play that card, right? So that's like most people, it's out of the question.
Right.
Again, like with different approaches, there is like the Shadow Fusion type approach. There's also like the hand trap approach. I think that there's certainly more. Like, look at the OCG for example. When they have 3 maxi, why would they choose to make their deck like a bunch of like once per turn board breakers? That wouldn't make any sense. So, in a format like the OCG, like they not only have to play hand traps like Ash to negate opposing maxis anyway, but they're playing cards that like make their maxi better if their opponent commits, as well as, you know, if they already have to play cross out for maxi, like you're gonna end up with your 1 Nibiru, your 1 Veiler, like your 1 or 2 Droll and Lockbirds. Like you're gonna end up with that type of stuff. So in the OCG, that's probably why they do not take like a board breaker approach the majority of the time. But I think in the TCG there could be room to take either approach. I don't really have concrete evidence of which is better at the moment.
Right. Until we have Costa Rica, right? Like we'll have like some type of result of like what people are more leaning toward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's like.
Well, I think overall the board breaker approach is not it.
It's not it, right? Yeah. Well.
I remember not too long ago, like especially back in December, like this deck didn't really have an answer for evenly matched, and now it's just like, haha, nice evenly matched, you nerd.
Right. So like I think cards like that like get worse. Although I will say though, so I'm looking at a lot of deck lists at the moment too. I think in the TCG, should everyone be on 2 Princess?
Actually, like let me go to the legal version.
Yeah.
Take that discussion, because I definitely do think there's there we go. Some changes.
Yeah.
So for sure
right.
we're cutting this to 1, and I think Arvada 2
Yeah.
is fine, and then we just add Bonfire, right?
Bonfire and Populous, Snake Eye Ash, stuff like that.
A lot of cards to add.
Oh, that, yeah. So Dom, like I've been hearing some stuff about like is 2 Princess actually the truth? Like for game, like.
It's kind of like on extra space. Like in a deck like the Pure Snake Eye deck, like you don't actually make enough cards in your extra deck to not have space to play 2. But like the second one doesn't come up. Like
Right. Because
I don't want to say it doesn't come up at all. Like there are certain times where it can come up, but you know, just somebody could definitely win a tournament with 1. Like I think someone is just as likely to win a tournament with 1 as to win a tournament with 2.
Right. Because I've been hearing about some boards as of right now where people are just making they're linking up and linking down, and it just so happens that like they'll leave a princess on board and the princess engraved just to play around stuff. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it makes Soul Release worse. Like, that's the point.
Yeah. So, just because of that, right? So, is it really just, like, you having all this quote-unquote extra deck space makes it, you have insurance for, like, the grind game? Because I feel like Fire King is, like, what you call, like, a mid-range strategy, where it's just, everyone has to play back and forth until someone messes up. Kind of like Tier.
I thought it was more like Unchained.
And it could be, right? But like I do feel that like if it's really just prevent the board from happening, it feels a lot like tier.
I mean, I actually feel like in tier format, it actually was almost never preventing the board. It was always breaking the board. But like Bestials made it worse. But like Magnuma was a card that replaced itself. It didn't like, and like Druish Worm would then be used on your own turn. You played a very grindy game like the whole time. And if like at a point like a card like Magnuma shut them off, then yeah, like their hand was not the greatest. But most of the time, you didn't expect the Bestial to cut them off completely. You just cut them off a fusion to make the board. Because Rukalos was so good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
But yeah.
what other changes would you make going into like Vegas per se? So for sure, Populous, right? Or maybe 2. I think Arvada's a 1-off now. I don't think you play Fenrir at all, right?
I don't think so.
You know, like, I mean, like, I just say like you should be playing like Snake Eye Ash and Flame Bridge or whatever. Like, I don't really have a opinion on the ratios of everything you're supposed to play, per se. But
I do want to talk about this too, because I'm seeing a lot of OCG reports at the moment. Everyone is cutting Baylor and Imprim from their deck. It is like, and I know that it's because like what the Fire King deck has Kieran, the Rescue Ace deck just has Emergency, or like SP Little Knight in their in part of the sequencing process. Was it the Silent Force deck just has Soravis? Like, those is it just possible just play all these high impact hand traps, like maybe just main deck Nibiru?
it's certainly possible.
Yeah, certainly possible. Yeah. Because like, I just have it redone the format right now where because everyone can't play these low impact hand traps anymore, you have to play these high impact hand traps just so that you just don't get blown out in like in these Fire King mirrors.
Cool. I'm just throwing random cards on the board.
Yeah,
I do want to get a solid idea how like this is gonna potentially look.
Yeah. Yeah, I see. No, what's the card next to Oak? That the level 1.
Oh, Birch.
Yeah, Birch. And that's being played, right? From what I've been hearing. I think that's card's like not super standard from what I know. It's just a 1-up Oak and then 2 Populous. And then that's another thing too. Do you think I see most people just only play 1 Ponix? Like, I don't think that's right. Maybe just a 2 of at the very least, because you have so much access to it. But like there's no need for 3.
Okay, let's see. I'm making edits based on like from what I know. I don't think you can play this anymore, and then it's supposed to be IP. So from what I've noticed, OCG doing and kind of what our players are adapting to is they would have a Princess Engrave with an Apo that you SP into, and it just like wins the mirror.
Right. So the problem I have with like doing this IP build with Sunlight Wolf is that I've been seeing a lot of people adapting to Super Poly to make like the the Earth Agnister fusion just to beat like Fire King or even like Rescue Ace. Like, is this right?
No, I think Super Poly sucks, right? There's no shot people are playing Super Poly's format.
I don't think they should, but like if everyone's making that board, then like Super Poly seems crazy. Like just stealing 2 monsters and you just can't Kieran. Or like you have to Kieran from your hand, right?
What does the combo end on with follow up? Do you guys know?
Like all I know is that Princess Engrave you have Kieran in your hand for the most part because you searched it.
Oh, I mean, if you searched it, that solves the problem, does it not?
But like it makes it so that you don't have all these negates up, from what I know. Like you just don't have like these Appaloosa negates that are just free. Like it also makes it so that it feels like your soul releases or like the graveyard hand traps that you have in your side that get better post side. But that means you have to have like a 3-card combo to like attempt to break the board and still have engine. Like like I said, at that point, right? Like Dom said, like it's probably better to prevent the board from happening rather than like let them establish it.
No, I think he said the opposite actually.
Oh, then never mind then.
Oh, I actually said that there's merit to both.
It's merit to both.
There
Okay.
is merit to both.
Okay.
Well,
So I know, like,
knowing you as a
yeah.
player, Dom, you're more of a break the board kind of guy, right? Generally.
Fun that way.
I agree
Right.
with you.
Okay. So this it's just a matter of what how do you want to maximize on an approach then? It seems like just play by player preference.
Alright, well, player preference doesn't exist. Something is either right or something is wrong.
All right, there you go.
But I mean, yeah. Do I enjoy breaking a board more? Yeah. But if like playing hand traps and stuff is the best way to go about it, then that's what I will do. You're really not gonna know until after the format is here. Like people are playing their decks at Costa Rica. Like you got to see the decisions on the combos that the TCG players actually choose to do. A deck like that is very hard to stop when you get max seed. There's no max seed here.
So
Right.
in terms of the rest of
You're gonna be
the
able to play it very differently.
right, so in terms of the rest of the format, I think we all agree that Fire King will be the deck to beat, right? But what are some other viable picks you guys think?
I think anything that could play Populous is broken. And then like the Labyrinth deck is good as well. That's what it looks like. And there's like some other like rogue picks as well. Like you don't want to count out Unchained completely. You don't want to count out Pearly completely. You don't want to count out like the Bestial, like Runic type decks as well. Like Orcus back as well. So yeah, I don't know. It should be like pretty diverse. I expect Fire decks to probably take up the majority of the top tables, but I expect it to be a pretty diverse top cut.
Diverse
Okay.
topic. Cool,
Okay.
because based on like OCG metagame reports, it's like 35% I think is just Fire King. So and their format overall is pretty diverse. I'm just curious, like is Fire only like is Fire the clear best when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh for the next 3 to 4 months? What do you guys think?
Populous is just broken. Like there's no other ways.
Populous is crazy.
Insane. And like until like all of those wanted engine type cards are hit, like they're just gonna be the most consistent cards that can push. Like they just do. Like a card like Snake Eye Ash does a lot. Like the Rescue Ace deck, like lost airlifters but gained bonfires. Like the fire decks are very good. They are very consistent.
Actually,
Like,
there is a deck we did not talk about, and that's the pack
The
list
Silent
of
Force deck.
no.
Oh.
Well, yeah, of course we'll have a separate episode for the Silent Force stuff, but the hybrid deck of Fire King and Rescues, I think that deck is absolutely bonkers and should not exist. There's no reason why you should normal summon Hydra and declare effect, and then suddenly use your Snake Eye cards to go into your Populace. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, like I do think like some of these hybrid decks coming into Costa Rica and Vegas are probably going to be like popular enough where it's going to be hard to hand trap both engines. And if you do right, like that means you just had like a really good hand, but like I don't think majority of like Swiss and like can handle like getting to another engine after getting hand trapped.
What are your thoughts on
Like,
that? Tom?
When you mix engines, you run into problems being able to go second. So I don't know. I haven't really tried.
Yeah,
Fair
you
enough.
haven't experimented. Okay, cool.
Fair
I
enough.
forgot to include it in our viability thing because let's be honest, that list is kind of expensive. Even though the rescue stuff is like now getting reprinted, it's still expensive nonetheless.
Right. Hmm. Well, other than that, I think that's what we can concur. Like, any closing thoughts, Taj?
No, I think this is the deck to beat, and I'm glad we went over some budget options for our budget players, as well as what's to be expected come Vegas. And yeah, super excited to see how this format pans out. Personally, for me, I am gonna take the backseat and be a viewer and not a player at the moment because I don't have access to wanted cards, and to be honest, I don't want to pay for them.
Fair enough.
All right.
Okay. Any closing thoughts, Dom?
Shoutouts.
Who do I give it to this time? All right. Shout out Steven Silverman for making everything possible. That is all.
That is all.
There you go.
All right, cool. All right, thank you guys for joining us today. Hope you guys enjoyed the Fire King discussion. Hope to see you next time, and we're glad to be off a break. Yeah, I know it's been 2 weeks since we've last uploaded, but thank you. And I hate doing this, but like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.